Welcome members and officers to this joint select committee meeting of the Children and Young People's Committee and the Economy and Development Select Committee. Prior to moving to agenda item 1, if we could just, for the purpose of the live streaming, introduce ourselves. I'm Councillor Sarah Jones, Chair of the Economy and Development Committee.
Hello, I'm Councillor Penny Jones and I'm Chair of Children and Young People and thank you.
Hazel Eilert, Scrutiny.
Richard Williams, Democratic Services.
Simon Nevesey, 21st Century Schools Manager.
Sian Hayward, Digital and Technology Manager.
Peter Davis, Chief Officer Resources.
Councillor Roger Harris, Member of Children and Young People's Select Committee. Oh, didn't do that right.
Councillor Maureen Powell, Member of Children and Young People's Select Committee.
Mike Fowler, Parent Governor Representative.
Good afternoon, County Councillor Liz Hackett-Payne, Cabinet Member for Education.
Good afternoon, Sarah McGuinness, Chief Officer for Children and Young People.
Dave Evans, Member of the Economy and Development.
Councillor David Dovey, Committee Member, Economy and Development.
Mark Howcroft, Assistant Head of Finance.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And just to make members aware, we're currently quorate, that is, unless anyone leaves, so no pressure. But yeah, so we've got the members' numbers at the moment. I'll move to agenda item 1, which is election of chair. I shall put myself forward as election of chair unless there's any opposition to that. And second that. Okay, thank you. And then appointment of vice chair, and I propose Councillor Penny Jones.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, sure. Apologies from Mr Plough, Councillor Farley, Annette Daly, Councillor Hickman and Councillor White.
And can I add one, please? Councillor Blakeborough.
Do we have any declarations of interest under agenda item 4? Councillor Harris?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, item 6, 21st Century School Board. I'm a member of the board and therefore I'm declaring a personal and prejudicial interest. So I hope that doesn't muck up the quoracy or whatever the right word is.
Okay, it will, so we'll just have to wait and see if any other members join us when we get to that item. Yeah. So, Councillor Powell?
I expect we're nearly all governors of schools, so we don't enter that as a
You can declare it, but it would be a non-prejudicial, so you can rotate it. Remain.
In that case, I'll declare that I'm a governor of Raglan School because I know it's one on the agenda today. Thank you.
I'm also Governor at Raglan as well, which does feature in some of the documentation.
Councillor Evans?
Yeah, I'm a Governor at Castle Park and Caldecott School.
Okay, if there are no further... Oh, Councillor Dovey?
Councillor and Governor at Chepstow School, if that's appropriate or not, I don't know.
Okay, we'll note it, and if there are any other declarations of interest as we move through the agenda, if you can make us aware, that would be great. So if we move then on to the substantive part of the agenda, and just to remind members that this meeting was called following issues raised predominantly in the Economy and Development Select Committee, but also by members of Children and Young People, hence the need for the joint meeting. And if we move then on to the agenda item 5, which is the first issue that's been raised in previous select committee meetings, and that's the ICT in Schools to review progress of ICT in Schools item. Members will be aware we had previously a joint meeting on this item to discuss the business case back in July last year under Councillor Jones's chairmanship. So this is to receive a progress update, and I believe that Sian will lead us on this item. Is that correct, Sian?
Yes, that's correct. I will do so.
Okay, over to you.
Just to refresh everybody's memory, what we were intending to do was enter into a very new and comprehensive service level agreement with the SRS, which actually started in April 2016, and at the same time to upgrade and update the school's ICT infrastructure, which includes the equipment and the Wi-Fi enablement, and also the installation of 100 meg PSBA lines into the various schools. The programme was intended to start around about this time last year, or towards the late end of the summer last year. But due to delays in signing up the agreements and then having to come back to Cabinet and Council to re-agree the programme going forward, the actual programme of investment didn't actually start until late January 2016. I've included a detailed list of what was going to be upgraded, what the service level agreement was going to do, and that's attached to the end of the report. And I don't intend to go through that in detail, obviously. It's a little bit too much for everybody can read through that item themselves. But as far as the actual investment programme goes, there are a series of dependencies, most of which start with the upgrade of the 100 meg lines. And I know some schools have already been upgraded, and I note that there are some people here from Raglan School, for instance, where they've already got the 100 meg lines. But before we can go forward and actually upgrade the Wi-Fi infrastructure and also to migrate schools up to the state-of-the-art SRS service, we do have to get these 100 meg lines in place. And there's also a step-by-step process that we have to go through before we can get those done. All of these surveys have now been completed in all of the schools, and I think that the frustration experienced in schools at the moment, and by ourselves as well, is that somebody didn't flick a switch and instantly we had those 100 meg upgrades in which people were able to use for their upgraded equipment. Unfortunately, it just didn't work like that. We have had some delays with the re-letting of a Welsh Government contract for the PSBA, and also internal delays with the BT actually winning the contract and able to be serviced with orders to upgrade the lines and equipment. At the same time as this, we've had to do surveys of all schools to check whether the actual network cabinets in the schools are able to receive a 100 meg line. It's not quite the same as your home broadband, where somebody comes along and actually plays around with the wires on one day. We do actually have to have the cabinets, the network cabinets, assessed for suitability. A lot of those cabinets have had to be replaced in the schools or relocated, and before we could actually upgrade the Wi-Fi in the schools, we had to have those cabinets relocated. It's no good putting the Wi-Fi in place and then there's a massive gap between the Wi-Fi cables and the actual cabinet that it connects it into. So all of these dependencies have led to some delays and a lot of frustration in the schools, as we are also experiencing frustration ourselves. But that is rapidly coming to a conclusion now, with all of the BT surveys coming in, all of the excess work surveys having been given costings, and they're coming in a lot more cheaply than we would have expected in some areas, particularly those areas which previously didn't have fibre to the cabinet but now do. So we are quite encouraged by that, but we also appreciate that no matter how much we can communicate progress on this programme of works, that schools are never going to understand the detail of the steps involved to get this in place. And we know that we've got to improve our communications with schools. So we have improved the way that we work with schools, the way that we visit the school governors' meetings where appropriate, or the MAPS meetings where the schools meet in their clusters, or sending out newsletters. And attached to this agenda item is also sort of a programme of works to be undertaken in detail. So it mentions specific schools in that programme of works. if any members have any queries or something that they'd like to raise on this programme of works, I'm happy to answer any questions whatsoever. And I can see a few people smiling, so I guess there's going to be a few questions coming my direction.
Thanks, Sian. That's really helpful. Perhaps before we kick off, can I just ask, and we talk about communication there with the schools, and there seems like there's some ongoing work that's happening and some proactive issues, taking place. But in terms of engagement by BT and the Welsh Government with you over the bottleneck issue and the transition, I mean, BT have won a huge contract, £400 million plus contract from Logicalis. What level of response have you had from them in terms of communicating with you over this sort of transition period and the issues that you faced thus far?
Okay, we have escalated the problems with delays with both BT and more recently with Welsh Government. We had problems. It wasn't just a case of letting the contract to BT. It was a case of letting the contract within BT then to other service providers. BT could then have sublet some of their work to people like TalkTalk, for instance. So we got caught up in that transitional sort of letting of the contracts. But we have escalated that with Welsh Government. And since we've escalated that, we have seen a marked improvement in performance. We are still being met sometimes with we've got a 90-day lead time to be able to get this work into place. But we have seen a marked improvement in the performance of BT over recent weeks.
That's reassuring then, I think, that action has taken place following you highlighting it with Welsh Government and BT. So good to know. Okay, members then, based on what we've been received today from Sian then, are there any further questions then and on the paper itself? Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Sian, just a matter of interest, how many schools did not sign the service level agreement?
We had 3 schools that didn't sign the service level agreement, and because of that we had to then revisit the costing of the actual service level agreement itself to make sure it was still viable, and hence the report that we made to Council and Cabinet to make sure that service level agreement could still hit the spot in effect. But we were within the financial package that we needed to actually provide that service level agreement. Some of those 3 schools that didn't sign up are also being charged for some of the work that some of the stuff that's centrally paid for in the authorities, such as Sims in the classroom and the internet provision.
Thank you.
Councillor Evans.
Sian, 3 schools that haven't signed up, and if they want to come into this package afterwards, is that going to cost them the same as what's costing the schools now, or is it going to be a bigger cost? And the second part is, when can we expect all the schools to be in the situation where they're working on this under?
Okay. Yes, the 3 schools that didn't sign up to the original agreement can come and take part in the service level agreement. What they can't do, unfortunately, is take part in the investment programme. They've missed the boat on the investment programme. So yes, they can come along, and it would be to their benefit and to the rest of the service level agreement. It has that little bit of robustness in there if they want to in the future. And obviously they'll be charged an appropriate amount, the same as the other schools, for providing that service to them. When can we expect all schools to be on the 100 meg line? Now we're hoping that most of them can be done by the end of September. Again, this is not something that the SRS can control from their end. They have met last week with the contractors to put the schedule and programme of works in place. Obviously, some of these works involve digging up the roads and putting traffic management in place, so they will take longer than others. But I mean, even though I've said we are hoping that the end of September we'll see a significant number of schools on the 100 meg line, we can't control that schedule of work, so that's speculative at the moment. By the end of the year, certainly, they will all be on the 100 meg lines.
Sure, Councillor Evans.
I would have thought with the schools finishing up on the 20th or 21st and not coming back till September, would have been the ideal time to do all this work, especially if roads have got to be dug up close to schools. They're not going to have the amount of traffic on it. So is there any way we can put some pressure on the contractors?
There again, we've got a difficulty here that I know that I've mentioned open source. It's not open source, it's OpenReach. OpenReach and BT are two separate parts of the same organisation. So they place orders with one another. And sometimes there's a little bit of a delay there. Yes, we would love to get all of these schools done over the school holiday period. Sometimes that requires access to the schools. And some of the schools where we're having to dig up the roads and the actual school grounds themselves will require property services to sanction those works before they actually occur. So there's some dependencies on our property services colleagues to make sure that can happen safely and effectively. Yes, we have put an awful lot of pressure on our contractors, but they are contractors at the end of the day. They're not outside of their 90-day agreements. And we are never going to get all schools done probably, while the schools are on holiday.
Mr. Fowler.
Hi, I'm just having a little look-see through Appendix 2. And I note in Step 1 of Appendix 2, you've got a whole load of schools listed and dates. All those dates have passed now. So I'm just wondering, is there an update for those? Did they all happen? And is there anything that's upset the apple cart with any of those, I guess?
All the ones that are in Step 1 go into Step 2, and all the ones in Step 2 go into Step 3. So it's this was an update that I had on all of the surveys that had been done as I wrote this report. So they were as they stood last Monday. So some of those dates, yes, they've gone past, and we've got a couple of schools which actually have had the 100 meg line installed to the school, and then we have to get our contractors to connect that up to the cabinet, and then the cabinet gets connected up to the SRS. So that is as it was last Monday. I haven't got any updates further since then.
It might be helpful to have ongoing updates via email, not necessarily in front of the scrutiny committee, just in terms of the dates that the connections are taking place, and progress update, I suppose. That might be useful.
If it's useful to this committee, we can include you on the monthly updates and the newsletters that we send out to the schools, if that's helpful.
I think that would be very helpful, and that was one of the questions I had, was around being able to see the copy of the newsletters that go out. So I think that would be really useful, providing members are in agreement with that. Yeah. So, okay. Sorry, Mr. Fowler.
Right. Just still while I'm in Appendix 2, I just notice in Step 5, you've got Derryview and Castle Park that are scheduled for their internal connection. And yet a paragraph down, you're also telling us that those two schools are fully operational. I just wonder how they're in both categories.
Right. I believe that what happens is that when the internal connection, which is the connection up to the network cabinet, happens, then you get the SRS on-site meeting with BT to actually connect them up to the 100 meg line. It's just a formality. So those schools, I would imagine those two schools, well, you were already being connected up to the line, haven't you? Those two schools will imminently be connected up. They're probably connected as we speak. Okay.
I was just trying to clarify, because it puts them in two categories of not quite ready and fully done. So
I went through all of this in detail with the SRS. I mean, obviously, I'm not a technical person, but it made sense to me at the time when we went through it all, and I asked that very question. But as I understand it, it's just a case with those now is just flicking the on-off switch and testing the line, because I believe that until it's been tested, then they don't go fully operational and taking the old line out.
Okay. We talked about ICT infrastructure and the work that's being or going to be carried out, but in terms of actually then being able to make use of that upgraded infrastructure, in terms of the equipment that our schools have at their disposal, under 4.4.2, it talks about after the initial upgrade, schools are then responsible for their own replacement programme. How confident are we that they are going to be able to sustain that in the current financial climate that they are in?
Schools have delegated budgets which include an element for the equipment upgrades and replacements. So they need to have their own independent refreshment programme within each individual school. If they don't, that makes it very difficult for us to service the SLA arrangements, because we continue to be servicing very old and out-of-date equipment. That is for the individual schools themselves. I know that as part, we have asked the schools that are not joining up to the SLA arrangements to service us with details of how they're going to do that, and that will be a requirement of the other schools as well. Not that we have to have that requirement in place to service the SLA, it's just that schools have a responsibility to make sure that their equipment is up to date. We won't be doing this exercise again in refreshing and upgrading their equipment for them.
Okay. Further questions, members? Okay, thank you. I mean, that's very helpful. We've had a number of questions, particularly around the transition arrangements. We've spoken about the schools that haven't signed up, those 3 schools, and the ability for them to be able to come in later. I know Councillor Evans raised that. When schools are expected to be fully on board on this, and how we can possibly encourage contractors to get work done over the summer period before the schools come back. And then in terms of the dates under the Appendix 2, and I think we've been given some clarity and confidence around some of those timescales. I think the question that we had around that, and then the answer around being able to provide us with a monthly communication in terms of what goes out into the newsletter would be very helpful to members. And then possibly this is something we might want to come back to and revisit once the Appendix 2 timescales have been complete, to see that everything's fully operational, and see where we are then for a progress report. Are members happy with that summary and those proposed actions?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Sian. That's been really helpful. We'll move on to item number 6, which is the 21st century schools, but we won't be quorate. So I wonder whether we move on to agenda item 7. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm conscious, obviously, if I go now, it will make the meeting inquorate, and I don't know if it's within the remit of the committee or indeed legal for me to sit here and take absolutely no part in the proceedings, but to make the meeting quorate.
If I may, Chair, if you've declared an interest as a prejudicial interest, you are required to leave the room. By sitting there, it won't make the meeting quorate, unfortunately.
Sorry, Councillor Harris. I think what I... Yeah, I was hoping too. Can I just ask one thing though? Would it be possible for us to move agenda item 7 forward in the hope that maybe a member turns up for agenda item 6 and then would be quorate? So would that be all right? And then we'll... So if we move straight on to agenda item 7, which is a discussion on schools curriculum, digital literacy, and within the curriculum. This was a particular interest for members of the Economy and Development Committee. We regularly scrutinise our iCounty strategy and the digital capability of our workforce. And then we felt that perhaps on that basis we needed to be looking at the school-age children and their ability then to come forward when they reach 18 in terms of being able to provide some of the gaps in STEM provision in the employment base. So on that basis we have Peter, I believe, is going to lead this item, and Sian, with support from Sarah as well. So we've got both sides covering this. So shall I hand over to you, Peter? Are you going to do a brief presentation to us?
A brief one, yes. I'm providing an update today, I guess, on behalf of other colleagues who unfortunately can't be at the meeting today. Bear with me, I guess, in some respects, but I'll be ably assisted, I'm sure, by other colleagues. I think responding, I guess, to member, issues and queries. I thought it just useful, I think, just to highlight to members some of the key frameworks that are in place within schools at the moment, and I guess provide members with a level of reassurance and comfort around how ICT and digital play their part within the curriculum within schools. So in effect, there are two very different, I guess, but important documents that are in play. The first is the ICT Programme of Study, which is part of the national curriculum. It's a statutory document, and there really, effectively puts in place a requirement to deliver skills from the ICT Programme of Study. And importantly, and whilst it's not been the case previously, from September 2016, ESTIM will be actually looking to inspect and report on the quality of ICT in all inspections moving forward. So it clearly highlights the importance of ICT within the curriculum, and clearly ESTIM feel that to be the case as well. The second important framework, which is, I guess, a developing one that's coming into play now, is the digital competence framework. And this has been put together with input from Digital Pioneer Schools. It's been designed to encapsulate skills that, I guess, help learners thrive in an increasingly digital world. And its aim and intention is to improve digital competence and, I guess, helping embed digital skills across the curriculum. The digital competence framework is something that's coming into play now. We'll see that starting to come into play now in September of this year, and is being supported significantly by the EAS and in terms of their 21st century learning priorities going forward. And the three key priorities effectively for schools from September of this year are number one, around strategic vision for ICT and the digital competency framework, which is in essence, I guess, understanding what the core beliefs and expectations are for ICT and the digital competency framework within each individual school setting. The second key priority for the digital competency framework from September is around self-evaluation, which is very much around us as schools understanding, where they are now, understanding what's working well, and identifying areas for improvement moving forward. And the third priority is around e-safety and the development of the Hub's 360 eSafe audit tool, which is there free for all schools and provides a dearth of supporting documentation for them to act on. So, as I said, the EAS are going to be providing a level of support into schools over the forward period, and this is very much a developing piece of work. And I guess going back to I guess the input from the Pioneer Network, which Sarah, I'm sure, can talk about in brief anyway, but it's very much a case that this is going to be ongoing input. The digital competency framework, it establishes itself in September, but it will evolve and iterate itself as ICT does and digital does on an ongoing basis. So as much as schools are expected to self-evaluate, the programme itself will as well, and it will shape itself. It will clearly identify I guess some of the skills gaps that are present within the teacher and the practitioner setting, and look to bring forward training programs accordingly. And again, highlighting the importance through all of this in making sure that all learners acquire the digital competencies that they need for the future. So I think as a starter, I think that's probably me. I don't know, Sarah, whether you want to add anything further at this stage.
Thanks, Pete. Really, what I'd want to add is that this is so welcome in the education sector in the sense that IT now is rightly considered as equal to literacy and numeracy. And I think the work that we are developing as an authority in relation to the infrastructure that Sian's already mentioned, in relation to the ongoing SLA issues that and Sian and her team have very ably tried to overcome with our schools. Actually all points to the fact that we as an authority also are taking the IT revolution very, very seriously. It is something that needs to be considered absolutely equally to literacy and numeracy and is going to be inspected thus, not just in relation to children's standards, but also in relation to the use of IT infrastructure by school leaders in relation to their strategic planning and their strategic use of IT. So the EAS, in terms of the support for this, are absolutely crucial, not just working with our schools in relation to curriculum, but also working with our education leaders in relation to their own use of IT and the systems and programs that they have to hand in order to build their own capacity for digital competence. There are a raft of projects happening in our schools as we speak. I won't go through each and every one of them, but can happily discuss that with members if they want to. There are projects going on around Welsh Baccalaureate, building capacity for digital competence, as I've mentioned, the IT leadership programme, progress in 21st century updates, which we are doing our best to change the terminology of, by the way, and you will find us referring to future schools as opposed to 21st century, and other curriculum developments as well. We do have pioneer schools in Monmouthshire who are working closely with Welsh Government on the output of Donaldson. Those pioneer schools are Caldicot and Gilwan, as well as Shire Newton and Trelech. They also are working with us closely on the development of the digital competence framework. The first version of the digital competence framework will be available from September this year. There'll be an online interactive version of it, and it'll be available to all schools to download. And we're also working very closely with digital pioneers, and this is an ongoing process, but it is, and we are addressing the needs of the profession as well as the needs of our children. That really is my contribution at this point, and I'm very happy to take questions.
Thanks, Peter and Sarah. So questions then, members, on this item. Councillor Jones?
I was just wondering, probably for Sarah, about teacher training in all of this. You know, what are the skills that are required, and are teachers being trained enough and in time?
So there is a factual answer and an answer that involves my opinion. We certainly, I mean, I'm certainly going to answer for the HE framework, but initial teacher training certainly has been addressing digital need for quite some time, and I'm sure they're addressing it very well. We also, though, of course, understand that in an ongoing workforce sense, we need to be supporting digital competence with all of our workforce. Initial teacher training certainly does its job well, and I'm sure is working on doing it even better. The fact is that much of our workforce in Monmouthshire are not initial teachers. They're not newly qualified teachers. Much of our workforce are established workforce. And in that sense, just like all of us in this room, our levels of digital competence differ. So we have a duty of care to make sure that our standards in teaching are actually meeting the needs of our young people.
Is there additional funding from Welsh Government based on the changes to the curriculum, the DCF coming up? Is there any additional funding for that training element of the teaching workforce?
I believe there is through the regional consortia, and regional consortia are consortia doing very well in terms of delivering training for current workforce.
Okay, Mr. Fowler.
Hi, just noting that from September 2016, Estin is going to report on standards in ICT. So I just wonder, for those schools that are perhaps overdue and expecting Estin on their doorstep any time, and in lieu of what Sian's been telling us about the programme and that it probably won't be complete by September, I just wonder what's going to happen for those schools should Estin come knocking on September the 1st. Are we ready, and are we prioritising those schools through Sean's plan to make sure stuff's in place? I just wonder, just tying the two items up a bit.
I think that's a really important point. But Estin's schedule is Estin's schedule. I've just received an email before stepping into this meeting relating to an impending Estin visit. The infrastructure and the work that is happening right now will be taken into consideration by the Inspectorate. I have no doubt about that. And we are, as a county, are in a position that many counties will find themselves in. Estin, yes, are inspecting on standards in IT, and they're inspecting differently, but I'm sure they will be taking into consideration the differing levels of infrastructure in counties and in different schools, and where they're at any one time. That's only reasonable, isn't it?
Do we have any private sector, I'm thinking more now on the workforce issues and the economy and development side of things, have we got any private sector support or investment? You know, we get employers like BT, for example, who are saying there's a massive gap in skills provision from young people coming through and being able to fulfil the roles that they have. Is the private sector looking to maybe support programs within schools or elsewhere where they can actually help support our young people, so it's not just necessarily public sector driven?
I know that our schools individually have existing relationships with private sector. Their relationships differ. There will be school leaders who are very outward looking and are grasping those opportunities and are looking for those opportunities. Whether the private sector come looking in the other direction is another matter, and I don't have a clear view on that. But as an authority, what I do know is that we are working as a directorate on how we can develop those relationships between private sector and schools, and that certainly is a huge element of the future schools work. We can get easily caught up in steel girders, but actually there's a lot more to future schools work, and that is one huge element of it.
Councillor Jones? Oh, do you want to come back on? Oh, Peter, yeah.
I guess the only thing to supplement, and I guess members of Economy and Development Select who are present today will be familiar with this, but you know, we'd received presentations to the committee from Superfast Business Wales a number of months ago, and their five-year programme of work around ICT exploitation with businesses. And one important and core aspect of that is with businesses recognising the current and future needs for their businesses around ICT, and clearly digital skills comes into play within that. I'm not sure that actually connects the dots, so to speak, enough. And in terms of the point that's rightly been raised, which is almost that seamless sort of transition from the school setting and into work, whether that's within an established company or I guess as somebody wanting to start a company themselves. But I'm also aware that Business Wales do actually provide training and support to businesses in that area.
If you don't mind if I come back, Councillor, before you come in, how could our iCounty strategy then reinforce that, or maybe join things up a bit more seamlessly? Is there an opportunity? I think our iCounty strategy is great, and you know, it's something we brought to scrutiny on a number of occasions, but maybe there's more of an opportunity there to join up the private sector education link as part of our future aspirations in that area.
Yeah, I think that's a fair observation, and certainly as we move forward with our programme of work around future Monmouthshire over coming months, that will require us to, I guess, look back at some of our core strategy documents. iCounty is one of those, and I guess we've got to look to marry, I guess, our aspiration, ambition with our available resource. But bear in mind, we do have within our economic development team, we have one full-time post that is linked to working with schools, and very much the case of bringing the private sector closer to schools. So maybe there's some reflection and considerations that we need to take going forward with the strategy.
Thanks, Peter. Simon, did you want to come in?
Yes, just to add to what the issue around training. As part of the Future Schools programme, we're setting up the classroom in the future within the existing school to test some of the technology and some of the digital environments in advance. So part of that is that bringing in the private sector. And some of the suppliers try and test their kit now to make sure that it meets the curriculum, and train teachers whilst we're building next to them, so that when they take over the new schools, become part of it, they were already aware of how the environments work for them. So there's a lot of work being done around the back to make that work, so we can break it now, try and work out what works for us now before we make those large investments.
So, yeah, I think mainly what I was going to say has been answered. Really, that colleges have been for some time involving private industry and working alongside them. And for instance, I know that McLaren came into Cross Keys and worked alongside them using their latest equipment. And that is a great help. It's mostly based on vocational, I know. But if we could encourage more schools to be responsible for finding out and opening up and having a dialogue with their own industry around them, then that would be something that we should encourage, perhaps. Thank you.
Councillor Powell, then Mr. Fowler to come in next.
I'm going to ask a very dinosaur, old-fashioned question. It's wonderful that we can keep up with this century and what's going on and all everything digital. What provision is made if there is a big blackout for any reason throughout the country of the electrical and ICT and everything about that? Is there enough backup that we could carry on teaching, or would you have to wait until it was all put right again?
If we're talking about a blackout across the country, I guess we'd be in the same boat as the rest of the country and not have anything at all. However, the benefits of actually migrating our school servers and their infrastructure up to the SRS is that the SRS is a state-of-the-art data centre, which is very, very secure. It has to be that way because of the police. And we've also got some of the health services and some private sector people there, storing their stuff there.
I've been up there.
The backup and the service provision there in the SRS is excellent. You're not going to have that problem with that backup failing in the event that everything else fails in the rest of the area.
Mr. Powder.
Hi, just noticing that it says on this briefing the first version of the DCF will be available from September 2016. I just wonder if really we're missing the opportunity to give our teachers and school staff a chance to look at it over the summer, think of ideas and make use of that inevitable first day of term inset day that we always seem to have. It seems as if that's the perfect chance to get some of this discussed.
That's a fair point. That's something I can raise regionally, but that date is a date set regionally as opposed locally. And I'd be very, very happy to think that teachers and staff and head teachers were giving their time to this over the summer. I'm sure they would, but this is a regional decision, national decision. Thank you.
I'd just like to say at that stage, I can tell who it doesn't teach for a living because it is quite hard. I mean, there is a lot of preparation that goes on throughout the summer holidays and they do need their time. So I think we've got to be a bit careful about putting more onto them.
And just moving back a bit to the private sector, sorry, moving back to that conversation again. In terms of, have we had any discussions with trying to attract investment into the county from major employers or otherwise? And has there ever been an issue with them saying we don't have the right skills within the workforce here and they've located elsewhere? Or do you think Monmouthshire is well placed to go forward with this agenda and actually be, I mean, we have always promoted ourselves as a digital county. Do you think we're in the right place now to really attract that investment from these sort of organisations and companies?
I'm happy to respond. I'm sure Pete will come in. I think we're in an excellent position to attract that kind of collaboration, particularly with the outward-looking work that is done by our very able and competent enterprise team and other colleagues. Monmouthshire is in a superb position to be attracting that kind of collaboration. Obviously, that isn't something education are doing alone and can do alone. We need to work further together to be attracting that. But I do know that there's a great deal of work underway with external partners, particularly in light of the work that's going on around Future Monmouthshire. I'm sure that other colleagues would be delighted to come in on that.
Yeah, Sarah sort of stole my thunder there. So just to, it's okay. Thanks, Sarah. So I guess, yeah, just to add really that, you know, let's just reflect on this. You know, we have some very high performing schools in Monmouthshire. You know, so, you know, the pupils that are leaving our schools are very well equipped. I guess the program, the digital competency program that we've discussed today, and you know, the arrangements are already in place with schools. You know, that puts pupils of today and in the future in very good stead. We don't have issues. We've never had issues really with regards to skills being an issue for employers coming into the county, and I don't expect that to change anytime, well, ever really, going forward. I guess issues that we face in terms of bringing inward investment into the county probably centre themselves around other issues which members of the Economy and Development Select Committee are probably well versed with.
Are there any further questions, members, then, on this agenda item? No, I think we've received a number of assurances today, and I think it's a very positive discussion we've had. I think we've seen that, you know, in terms of the previous agenda item as well, we're getting the infrastructure in place to enable us to make this happen and to equip our workforce for the future with the right skills that they need, not just in their working life, but in their everyday life, given the importance of the digital agenda. I think there have been some suggestions around how we can bolster maybe the iCounty strategy and make improvements so the Future Schools project and Future Monmouthshire, it seamlessly links together all these issues. So it's about economy and education linking in, which I know is done already, but maybe just sort of bolstering that with the ability to engage with the private sector. Just to run through very briefly, then summarise some of the sort of issues that we've raised and we've received reassurances over. We've discussed around teacher training and ability of our teachers, you know, to go forward and teach the curriculum as it's being presented, whether there's additional funding for our teachers to be trained from Welsh Government. What happens to schools if they receive an Eston inspection once this takes place on 1st of September, and whether or not the infrastructure will be in place by then. We've, as I said, had a lengthy discussion around private sector involvement in this agenda, and how we can encourage schools to be more responsible for their approach in this regard. There was a question around the potential for what would happen if the infrastructure itself failed. And looking at how schools can look at the new curriculum, the new digital competence framework over the summer ahead of the 1st of September and their return back from the summer recess. So I think that pretty much summarises it, unless any members have anything further to add. We look forward to receiving further updates. I'm sure it's something both committees will be monitoring and hopefully scrutinise further over the next 12 months, particularly linking up, as I said, to the previous agenda item. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Sarah, Peter, Sian and Simon on that item. So we will move on to agenda item 6, and I think we're in the position where we're not going to be able to take this agenda item forward. Is that still the case? We haven't had any member outside maybe indicate they're going to come in. Councillor Jones.
Can I say something then? When we were in this position in Children and Young People Select, we heard the report from the officer concerned, because we felt it was, you know, right to do so. Obviously, it wasn't scrutinised, but it was for information only. And I suggest, as we have Simon here, that we go ahead and hear his report, but not under the auspices or after perhaps the end of this meeting. I don't know how you do it to delegate it, but we certainly did it before.
It does feel a shame when Simon's no doubt put a lot of work into this, that we can't at least hear that. Councillor Evans, did you want to just come in before you?
I'm going to endorse what Penny just said. That's what I was going to say when I put my hand up first. I think it's a shame that we got officers here, and out of 43 members, there's 7 members here. I think it's disgusting. They're quick enough to complain about things not being done, and I feel that it should go on record that we are disgusted, because the member's going to leave now and we're not going to be quoried when we can't go through the item 6. But I don't disagree with what Penny have just said.
If we do go ahead with Penny's approach, then we'll have to close formally the meeting now. Thank you very much to Councillor Harris. I'll let you go, but thank you very much for attending. So we're going to switch the live streaming off now, so we've ended the meeting.